Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we take stacks of knowledge and really distill them down to the most compelling insights so you, the listener, get the full picture without all that information overload.
And today, wow, today we are definitely strapping on the skates.
We really are. We're taking the wind into the life, the legacy, and frankly, the truly unbelievable statistical catalog of one man, Wayne Gretzky, the great one.
It's a dive that is almost mandatory, really, because when you look at the raw numbers, the story they tell is so statistically absurd, it almost defies any kind of rational analysis.
And he wasn't a physical specimen, which is the crazy part.
Not at all. We're talking about a center listed at 6 feet, maybe 185 pounds, soaking wet. By no means a physical marvel for the NHL era he played in. But this is the guy who retired holding an astonishing 61 NHL records.
61? Just say that number again.
61. 40 regular season, 15 playoff, and 6 All-Star records.
That sheer volume of dominance is hard enough to process, but there's one specific, just mind-bending fact that always resets my brain when I hear it. Let's start there, because I think it informs our entire deep dive into his intellect.
Absolutely. The number to remember is 1,963.
Okay, 1,963. What's that?
That's the number of career assists Wayne Gretzky recorded, just the assists.
Just the assists. Okay, I'm with you.
Now, if you look at the next closest player in terms of total career points, that's goals plus assists.
Right.
It's Jaromir Jagr, who finished his legendary career with 1,921 points.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I'm hearing that correctly and that the sources aren't pulling our leg. You're telling me that Wayne Gretzky accumulated more assists alone than the next most productive scorer in NHL history scored in their entire career, combining both goals and assists.
That is the factual foundation of his entire career. More setups, more apples than anyone else has total combined offensive production. It's an anomaly that, it just stands alone in major North American sports. And that statistical gap is precisely why our mission today is to go beyond the surface level, beyond just counting the goals. We need to dissect the mind and the influence of the greatest player ever to understand how someone who was, physically not imposing could so utterly dominate a physically brutal sport for 2 decades.
It really sets up the central question. If he wasn't the biggest or the fastest or the strongest, then what was he?
Okay, let's unpack this and start at the beginning. We've got a ton of source material on his journey, starting way before the NHL ever knew what hit it. Let's get into part 1, the Prodigy and the Rebel League. Where does this origin story, this foundation for all that statistical absurdity, really begin?
It begins in Brantford, Ontario, back in the 1960s. And specifically in the backyard of the family home, which they affectionately nicknamed the Wally Coliseum.
The Wally Coliseum, I love that.
His father, Walter Gretzky, wasn't just a supportive parent. He was like an engineer of talent. He designed that backyard rink specifically for hockey. It had lights, it had boards.
Yeah, this wasn't just a frozen puddle. No, not at all. This wasn't a patch of ice. It was a dedicated training facility that allowed Wayne to skate, sometimes for 10 hours a day, developing skills that no organized league could possibly replicate.
Okay, the preparation was clearly maniacal. I want to dig into that concept. What does maniacal preparation actually look like in practice? We aren't talking about just skating laps here. What were these drills?
That's the key. Walter's methods were highly unconventional, and they were designed to force Wayne to focus on control and anticipation over just raw speed. So instead of simply pushing a puck, he would use household items to create these intricate obstacle courses.
Like what?
For instance, he made Wayne skate around bleach bottles and tin cans. The whole point wasn't just beating the obstacles, it was maintaining puck control while circling them at high speed. It forced these extremely tight turns and rapid, precise stick handling.
So those drills were basically teaching him the kind of tight quarters control he would later need in the NHL, maneuvering through traffic right in front of the net.
Exactly. And the most famous drill, the one that directly foreshadows his vision on the ice, involved flipping pucks. Walter would scatter hockey sticks all over the ice and force Wayne to flip the pucks over the sticks and then retrieve them again in full flight without losing speed or rhythm.
Wow. Think about the coordination that requires.
It's immense. You're judging the precise trajectory to clear the stick, finding the exact landing spot, and then recovering the puck seamlessly while you're still moving at top speed.
That's fascinating because it connects directly to his later skill of, saucing the puck over a defenseman's stick or tapping a puck just over a goalie's pad. It taught him elevation and control.
And out of that intense, almost personalized preparation came Walter's famous, crucial piece of advice, which really underpins all of his later strategic success.
Skate where the puck's going, not where it's been.
That sentence is the core thesis of Gretzky's genius. It's this idea of anticipation and geometry applied to physics. While other players were reacting to where the puck was, Gretzky was trained from childhood to occupy the space where the defensive scheme had not yet arrived. It's a philosophy that just prioritizes spatial intelligence over everything else.
And the results they were immediate and massive, even at the minor hockey level.
Oh, phenomenal. He was a prodigy who was just dominating well above his age group. At age 6, he was playing on a team with 10-year-olds.
At 6?
At 6. His first coach, Dick Martin, stated that Wayne handled the puck better than his 10-year-olds, which meant other good players were often overlooked because Gretzky was just monopolizing all the action.
And the stats from that time are they're video game numbers.
They're shocking. By age 10, he scored 378 goals and registered 139 assists in just one season with the Brantford Nadrowski Steelers.
In one season?
One season. By age 13, he had scored over 1,000 career goals in minor hockey.
That kind of dominance, unfortunately, it attracts intense scrutiny, pressure, and often a lot of jealousy from the surrounding community.
It absolutely did. The negative attention became so pervasive and so intense, he was frequently booed by the parents of opposing players, sometimes even the parents of his own teammates.
That's awful.
It reached a point where the environment just became toxic. Walter Gretzky recalled the capper being when Wayne was booed during Brantford Day at Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens in 1975.
So that level of, communal toxicity led the family to make a pretty painful decision, right?
It did. To escape the pressure and protect his development, they moved him to Toronto at age 14 to play Junior B hockey. And this was in a league where he was competing against 20-year-olds.
It's a powerful, almost tragic insight that the greatest Canadian hockey player ever had to leave his own hometown just to find peace and continue developing his game.
He was literally chased out of Brantford by his own success.
While he was playing in junior hockey, he gets picked up by the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds in the OMJHL draft at age 16. And that's where he chose the iconic number that would eventually be retired league-wide.
Yes, the number 99. He originally wanted to wear number 9, which was the number of his lifelong hero, the great Gordie Howe. But a teammate already had it.
So what happened?
His coach, Muzz McPherson, just suggested he double it up. Wayne was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed, settling on 99.
Which quickly brings us to 1978 and his jump to the World Hockey Association, the Rebel League. We need to establish the context here. Why would a 17-year-old jump to a professional league when the NHL explicitly banned players under 20?
Because the WHA was desperate. They were struggling, down to only 7 surviving franchises, and they knew they couldn't compete head-to-head with the NHL establishment.
So they needed a different angle.
Their opportunity lay in exploiting the NHL's rigid rules. They saw signing young superstars like Gretzky as necessary leverage against the hardline NHL owners who kept blocking a potential merger. The WHA needed a hook, and a 17-year-old phenom was the best bait they had.
So he becomes a professional at 17, and the deal itself was structured in a very unique way, wasn't it?
It was highly unconventional, and it really reflected the WHA's instability. On June 12, 1978, he signed this massive 7-year U.S. $1.75 million personal services contract with Indianapolis Racers owner Nelson Skalbania.
A personal services contract, not a standard player contract.
Right. This structure was designed for maximum flexibility. Skalbania, knowing the Racers likely wouldn't survive a merger, wanted to be able to sell the asset Gretzky himself for a significant return rather than having the contract voided if the team folded.
And that Indianapolis venture was clearly unstable. It only lasted 8 games. That must have been incredibly disorienting for a teenager who had just gone pro.
It was jarring. The Racers were losing $40,000 a game. Skalbania realized he had to cut his losses and move Gretzky immediately.
And the story of the trade itself is just bizarre.
It has this weird high-stakes, almost spy thriller element to it. Gretzky, a goalie named Eddie Mio, and a forward named Peter Driscoll were just put on a private plane with no prior knowledge of where they were going. While they were in the air, Skalbania was actively working the phones.
I can't imagine the anxiety of that plane ride. They were flying blind, literally. Was there any sense of betrayal or worry from Gretzky at that moment?
According to the accounts, yeah, there was immense confusion and anxiety, and it was compounded by the fact that Skalbania was just using Gretzky as a pawn.
He even tried to use a game to decide his fate.
He did. Scalabania tried to get the Winnipeg Jets owner, Michael Gobuti, to play a game of backgammon to decide Gretzky's destination and his fate, which, thankfully for Gretzky, Gobuti declined.
Yeah, so the plane finally lands and they find out they're in Edmonton.
Yes. On November 2, Gretzky was sold to Edmonton Oilers owner Peter Pocklington for $700,000, along with Mio and Driscoll. The Indianapolis Racers folded that December. It was just a chaotic start to a legendary career.
But the WHA wasn't without its legendary moments for him before the league folded. I mean, there was that spectacular opportunity to play with his hero.
Oh, it was a dream scenario. The 1979 WHA All-Star Game was played as a 3-game series against Dynamo Moscow. And the coach, Jacques Demers, chose to put the 17-year-old Gretzky on a line with none other than Gordie Howe and Gordie's son, Mark Howe.
Incredible.
In Game 1, that 3-generation line combined for 7 points, and the WHA All-Stars won 4-2. That moment really secured his feeling of belonging in the professional ranks.
And he secured his status permanently on his 18th birthday.
Pocklington, the Oilers owner, he moved quickly to protect his new asset. On January 26, 1979, Gretzky's 18th birthday, Pocklington signed him to a massive 10-year personal services contract worth $3 million Canadian dollars. It was the longest in hockey history at the time.
And that ensured his future, regardless of what happened with the merger talks.
Absolutely. Gretzky finished that WHA season third in scoring with 110 points, won the Lou Kaplan Trophy as Rookie of the Year, and led the Oilers to the best record in the league.
And crucially, the WHA's existence, largely due to the presence of young stars like Gretzky, it forced the NHL's hand.
It did. The NHL eventually agreed to absorb the Oilers and 3 other WHA teams in 1979. And because Gretzky had that legally valid long-term personal services contract with Pocklington, the NHL was forced to agree to a special arrangement.
Right, you always got to keep him.
They could keep Gretzky as a priority selection, though in exchange they were placed at the very bottom of the draft order for years to come. The groundwork was laid, and the NHL was about to be turned completely upside down.
He was a WHA star, but that's not the NHL. That league was notoriously tougher, bigger, and slower. So now we move to part 2. The dynasty years in Edmonton, 1979 to 1988. How quickly did he silence the critics who said he was simply too small, too wiry, and too slow for the real league?
He silenced them immediately and definitively. The sources make it clear that the criticism was intense. NHL executives were constantly questioning whether his game would translate against larger, more aggressive defensemen. And yet, in his first NHL season, 1979-80, he tied Marcel Dion for the scoring lead with 137 points.
Which in itself is remarkable for a rookie, but the tiebreaker went to Dion because he had more goals.
Correct. Dion got the Art Ross Trophy, scoring 53 goals to Gretzky's 51. But Gretzky walked away with the Hart Memorial Trophy as the league's most valuable player, making him the youngest player to ever score 50 goals and win the MVP award.
And he was ineligible for Rookie of the Year.
Yep. He was ineligible for the Calder Trophy because of his WHA experience. That award went to Ray Bourque instead.
So he was already MVP caliber, but then his scoring output went from dominant to just statistically absurd in the 1981-82 season. This is the year where the league finally understood this was something completely unprecedented.
That season alone cemented his immortality. He didn't just break records, he obliterated records that had stood for 35 years and were considered untouchable, belonging to legends like Maurice Richard.
The most famous feat, of course, was the 50 goals in 50 games.
A milestone that Richard and Mike Bossy had achieved. But Gretzky did it in just 39 games.
39 games. That's a pacing that shouldn't be physically possible in modern professional hockey. Can you dramatize the end of that run for us? What was the energy like on the night he achieved it?
The energy was electric intense. He was chasing the record against the Philadelphia Flyers on December 30, 1981, his 39th game of the season. He entered the game with 45 goals, meaning he needed 5 goals that night.
Which seemed impossible.
Totally impossible. He scored 1 in the first, 2 in the second. Then, late in the third, he scores number 49. The Oilers pull their goalie to create open ice for a frantic final minute, and with 5 seconds left, he hits an empty net goal in his 5th of the night to secure the record, the win, and just a frenzy of excitement.
Unbelievable drama. And he didn't slow down after that.
No, the next record to fall was Phil Esposito's single-season goal record of 76. Gretzky broke that on February 24th, 1982, with a hat trick against the Buffalo Sabres. And he just kept pushing the envelope. He finished that 1981-82 season with all-time single-season records of 92 goals, 120 assists, and 212 points in 80 games.
He is the only player in NHL history to ever break the 200-point mark, a feat he accomplished 4 times during his career. This is where he transcended hockey and became a national phenomenon.
It's true, the statistical achievement was just too large to ignore. In 1982, Gretzky became the first hockey player and the first Canadian to be named Associated Press Male Athlete of the Year. He was also named Sports Illustrated Sportsperson of the Year. He was arguably the biggest sports star in North America at that moment.
And all that individual scoring power eventually combined with an incredible roster to forge the Stanley Cup dynasty.
Yes. Gretzky was the captain from 83 to 88, and he was surrounded by Hall of Famers Messier, Curry, Coffey, Furr. They reached the finals in 83, lost to the 3-time defending champion Islanders, which was a necessary learning experience for that young group.
And then they broke through.
Then they broke through, winning 4 Stanley Cups in 5 years, 1984, 1985, 1987, and 1988. By the time he left Edmonton, Gretzky held or shared 49 NHL records.
That level of dominance warranted a rule change designed specifically to punish his team's success. We have to discuss the rule that literally bears his name, the Gretzky rule.
This is a phenomenal piece of evidence showing the league's frustration with the Oilers' superiority. In June 1985, the NHL Board of Governors implemented a rule change mandating offsetting penalties. So if 2 players committed coincident penalties, neither team lost a man, and they remained 5-on-5.
We talk about this as the Gretzky rule, but wasn't the rule actually correcting what some might see as an unfair loophole that existed prior? How much backlash did the league get for implementing it, specifically because it targeted the Oilers?
Well, the official argument was that it streamlined the game, but everyone knew the real reason. The Gretzky-era Oilers, with their speed, their precision passing, and Gretzky's open-ice vision, were absolutely lethal in 4-on-4 or 3-on-3 situations.
They didn't even need the power play.
Exactly, they just needed more space. The rule was seen as directly targeting and punishing the team that benefited most from Gretzky's style of play.
Gretzky himself must have had a strong reaction to the league, effectively trying to neuter his team's advantage.
He was highly critical, arguing that the NHL was punishing teams and players just for being successful. It was viewed as an acknowledgement that the only way to stop the Oilers was to prevent them from exploiting open ice. It truly is a remarkable badge of honor. Your dominance is so complete that the rulebook itself must be altered to slow you down. It's also telling that the rule was reversed for the 1992-93 season. By that time, the Oilers' core dynasty had largely dispersed, and the need to suppress 4-on-4 situations was diminished. The reversal confirms that the rule was implemented less for the fairness of the game and more for the competitive balance of the league during the Gretzky era.
That sets the stage perfectly for Part 3. Decoding the greatness. This is the heart of our deep dive. We've established the statistical output, but now we need the how. How did he achieve this when he was so physically unremarkable for the league?
This is where we get the real aha moments. We have to start with the stark contrast between his mental game and his physical attributes. Gretzky's physical reality was consistently underwhelming. He was 5'11", often weighed around 170 pounds, and he admitted to scoring last in strength tests on the Oilers.
And the bench press number is famous.
The sources confirm he reportedly bench pressed only 140 pounds, which is exceptionally low for a professional hockey player.
Wait, hold on. If he was that small and that weak bench pressing less than his own body weight, which is nothing for a pro athlete, how did his teammates, guys like Mark Messier, who was the epitome of physical toughness, justify the idea that this guy was leading them, especially when hockey was so much more brutal back then?
That's a fantastic point, and it's critical to understanding his leadership. His teammates respected him not for his muscle, but for his output, and more importantly, for his strategic brilliance. He won games with his brain, which in turn created more opportunities and, frankly, less hitting for his teammates.
So they valued the brain over the brawn.
Completely. Oilers coach Glenn Sather summed up the sentiment perfectly. He said, he was so much more intelligent. While opponents were using all this energy trying to rattle his teeth, he was just skating away, circling, analyzing things. His mental game was so far ahead that his physical weakness was just irrelevant.
He was the intellectual quarterback of the team. And that intelligence led directly to his famous positioning, the legendary office.
Precisely. Gretzky became known for setting up shop behind the opponent's net, an area previously considered, useless for a high-volume scorer. This area was so dangerous when he occupied it that it earned its own nickname, Gretzky's office.
And his whole strategy came down to a simple phrase.
His entire strategic philosophy, which he summed up in his own words, was simple: find open ice.
I love his analogies for this, connecting his strategy to basketball, specifically to Larry Bird. What did he say about that comparison, and how does it translate into a hockey application?
He connected it perfectly to effort and efficiency. He argued that the hardest work Larry Bird does is actually getting open, creating the passing lane, finding that sliver of space, and the actual shot is cake.
Right.
Gretzky applied that exact logic to hockey. He wasn't relying on brute force or sustained speed bursts. He was letting the puck and the defense do the work, saying, let the puck do all the moving and you get yourself in the right place. So by establishing his office behind the net, he forced the defense to commit to covering him, pulling them out of their defensive linemen. If they ignored him, he had the best angle for a pass or a quick wraparound. If they committed to him, he could feed the puck out front to his elite scorers, Curry and Messier, who are now essentially facing a scrambled defense.
He was always in that sweet spot.
He consistently occupied what Chicago coach Mike Keenan called the no man's land, that piece of frozen real estate just between the defense and the forward, where the goalie can't effectively see or set up.
Beyond positioning, his ability to pass and shoot was legendary, especially how he adapted to opponents' defensive shifts. What was his early reputation, and how did he counter the subsequent adjustment opponents made?
Initially, through his first couple of NHL seasons, he was seen primarily as the ace playmaker. The Hall of Famer Bobby Orr famously declared, "He passes better than anybody I've ever seen." So the league quickly realized that stopping his passing was paramount. Defenses started focusing almost solely on blocking the passing lanes he generated from behind the net.
And how did Gretzky counter that hyper-focus on his passing?
This is a perfect illustration of his genius, adaptability. He just shifted focus and started shooting with exceptional effectiveness. He went from being the league's best passer to being arguably the most efficient shooter.
And the statistics prove just how surgically accurate he was.
Oh, absolutely. When Phil Esposito set the prior goal record of 76, he needed 550 shots. Gretzky netted his 76th goal in that 92-goal season after just 287 shots, about half as many. He finished the season scoring 92 goals on only 369 shots.
That is absolutely surgical accuracy. It means over 25% of his shots were goals. It's no wonder goalies struggled to read him.
They absolutely did. Goalies referred to his shots as sneaky fast, not because they were overpowering slap shots, but because they were unexpected and released from unconventional angles and moments. Because he was so light, his shooting rhythm and technique were different. And crucially, he never shot with the same rhythm twice, making his release much harder to time and block than, say, a consistent one-timer.
This all feeds into that perception that he had some sort of sixth sense, that he could manipulate or distort time on the ice.
That perception was widespread. The Canadian journalist Peter Gazowski noted that Gretzky seemed to be able to slow down time. He observed this unhurried grace to everything he did, suggesting that in crucial moments he would literally insert an extra beat into his actions.
Like holding the puck for a fraction longer than anyone expected.
Exactly. In front of the net, he would hold the puck for one extra instant, upsetting the anticipated rhythm of the defense and the goalie, buying himself the fraction of a second needed to exploit a weakness.
People often suggest that he had ESP, eyes in the back of his head.
Yeah.
Gretzky must have had a more grounded explanation for this superhuman perception.
He did, and it goes right back to Walter's advice. He explained that it wasn't seeing, it was sensing. He wasn't necessarily looking at the player he was passing to. He said, a lot of times I can turn and pass without even looking.
But that's not magic.
No. And here is the critical part, the ultimate deep dive nugget. Gretzky attributed this not to instinct, but to relentless study and practice.
So what looked like creative genius on the fly was actually a product of training and pattern recognition.
Exactly. He was the ultimate student of the game. He compared his practice time and his analysis of hockey scenarios to that of a medical student, recognizing and exploiting stored patterns in his brain. The sources confirm he had mentally cataloged hundreds of defensive setups, goalie reactions, and common passes.
So what looked like improvisation was just recall.
In his own mind, yes. What looks like a split-second creative improvisation was simply a reaction to a situation he had already analyzed, stored, and prepared for countless times. His brain was processing the game faster than anyone else on the ice because of his dedication to pattern recognition.
That is profound. It suggests that even genius is fundamentally preparation. And beyond that mental stamina, he also had incredible physical stamina despite his size, which we see in his late-game scoring.
He did. His capacity to renew energy resources was off the charts. When an exercise physiologist tested his recuperative abilities, Gretzky scored so high that the tester literally thought the machine had broken.
Wow.
This physical longevity meant he got better as the game went on, when others were fading. We see this in his scoring. 40 of his record 92 goals in that 1981-82 season were scored in the third period. He was stronger when the defensemen guarding him were exhausted.
How did he manage to survive year after year in that era of brutal hockey without being physically imposing or, fighting back?
He was a defensive master purely through avoidance, a skill he learned in the summer playing box lacrosse. At age 10, he was scoring 158 goals in lacrosse, a sport where players are constantly checked and hit. He learned how to roll body checks for self-protection because, in lacrosse, you could be hit from behind.
So he learned to absorb the contact instead of taking it head on.
This technique helped him absorb contact, dissipate the force, and avoid the devastating, career-shortening injuries that contemporaries like Mike Bossy suffered. Gretzky himself noted that Bossy took a beating to score goals, which consequently led him to retire young.
So he was the master of the subtle evasion. Denis Potvin, another Hall of Famer, had a famous quote about trying to hit him.
Potvin famously compared trying to hit Gretzky to wrapping your arms around fog. And of course, he also received cover from teammates like Dave Semenko and Marty McSorley, the team's burly enforcers. But arguably his best defense, according to teammate Lee Fogelin, was his scoring. He said, if a guy ran him, Wayne would embarrass that guy, he'd score 6 or 7 points on him. He weaponized the score sheet against aggressive players.
And this intellectual style, it fundamentally changed the sport globally.
It did. Ken Dryden, another legend, credited both Gretzky and the Soviets for changing the NHL game. He referred to Gretzky as the acceptable face of Soviet hockey, meaning he brought that precise five-man unit strategy normally associated with the international game to the rough-and-tumble NHL.
He made it mainstream.
His approach inspired a massive tactical shift toward a more team-based strategy, moving the focus from the single player with the puck to the synchronized movement and positioning of the five-man unit on the ice.
That is a phenomenal analysis of how his intellectual gifts translated into physical dominance and league-altering strategy. But all dynasties end. And the Oilers' end came in one of the most dramatic, if not traumatic, events in Canadian sports history: the trade. This shifts us to part 4, the cultural earthquake.
It was more than a cultural earthquake. It was a national trauma. The drama started immediately after the Oilers won the 1988 Stanley Cup.
Right.
Literally 2 hours later, Gretzky learned from his father, Walter, that he was being shopped.
2 hours after winning the Cup.
Walter had actually been tipped off months earlier by the former Indianapolis owner, Scalabania, but he kept it quiet until after the final game was over.
It's almost unbelievable that an owner would trade the greatest player in the world, the face of the franchise, just after winning a championship. Why the sudden, desperate move?
Owner Peter Pocklington needed money, and he needed it immediately. His other business ventures, including meatpacking, were struggling badly, and his assets were heavily leveraged. Gretzky's massive contract had previously been used as collateral for a $31 million loan. Pocklington saw Gretzky not just as an asset, but as a financial escape hatch.
Despite the dire situation, the deal wasn't simple. Gretzky initially didn't want to leave Edmonton, but once he realized it was inevitable, he had specific prerequisites for the trade to happen.
He did. He negotiated his terms directly with Los Angeles Kings owner Bruce McNall, and his key non-negotiable condition was emotional. 2 teammates, his protector, Marty McSorley, and forward Mike Krushelnyski, had to join him.
He was loyal.
Both owners agreed. But Pocklington had one final, almost punitive condition. Gretzky had to personally call him and formally request the trade, ostensibly to protect Pocklington from the fallout.
August 9, 1988, the day that shook Canada. What were the full terms of the trade?
It was a massive haul for Edmonton, a transactional spectacle. Gretzky, McSorley, and Krushelnyski went to Los Angeles. In return, the Oilers received 2 young players, Jimmy Carson and Martin Gelinas, plus $15 million in cash, and 3 valuable first-round draft picks in 89, 91, and 93.
The reaction from the Canadian public and the political sphere was immediate and incredibly visceral.
The country was in shock. The reaction was rage and this feeling of profound national betrayal. New Democratic Party House leader Nelson Rees made a highly publicized, though ultimately futile, demand that the Canadian government block the trade, citing its cultural significance.
And Pocklington became public enemy number 1.
He became a national villain. He was literally burned in effigy outside Northland's Coliseum. The trade became known simply as the trade.
Yet, when Gretzky returned to Edmonton for the first time as a King, the emotional dynamic inside the arena seems to have been completely different from the public sentiment.
It was an overwhelming display of love, not anger. His first appearance in Edmonton, nationally televised across Canada, was one of the highest-rated sporting events of the year, and it resulted in a 4-minute standing ovation.
4 minutes.
The arena was packed, 17,503 fans, a new record attendance at the time. He got massive cheers for his first shift, his first touch of the puck, and his 2 assists. It was this raw, emotional moment of collective grieving and appreciation.
And he had to publicly address the feeling that he had abandoned his country.
He used that moment to try and repair the relationship with the public, confirming his deep patriotism. He said, "I'm still proud to be a Canadian. I didn't desert my country. I moved because I was traded, and that's where my job is. But I'm Canadian to the core. I hope Canadians understand that."
And the city eventually came around.
They did. It was reconciled, evidenced by the statue of him holding the Stanley Cup that was later erected at beside Northland's Coliseum.
Moving to Los Angeles, he made an immediate and massive impact, both on the ice and culturally, in a place that barely knew what hockey was.
He hit the ground running. He scored on his very first shot on goal in his first regular season game as a King. He was named alternate captain, and the Kings got off to their best start ever.
And he won the MVP that year.
He did. Although he finished second in scoring, he won the Hart Trophy as MVP, narrowly beating Mario Lemieux, who had put up a nearly 200-point season himself. The voters clearly recognized the immense value and lift Gretzky provided to a historically middling team.
And he achieved the ultimate revenge against his old team.
He did. In the 1989 Smythe Division semifinals, the Kings were massive underdogs against the defending champion Oilers, especially after falling behind 3-1 in the series. But Gretzky led them back, winning 3 straight games to take the series 4-3. It was the symbolic passing of the torch and confirmation that his genius was transportable.
But the larger, permanent impact was cultural, right?
Yeah.
He changed the geography of the sport.
Absolutely. Gretzky is single-handedly credited with popularizing hockey in California. His arrival dramatically boosted attendance not just in LA, but across the entire state. His star power drew in media attention, Hollywood money, and crucially, new fans in non-traditional U.S. markets.
The NHL map effect.
It's known as the NHL map effect. The league recognized the opportunity he created.
And what was the direct result of that NHL map effect in California?
During his tenure in Los Angeles, California received 2 more NHL franchises, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim and the San Jose Sharks. He didn't just play in the league. He was a league-wide expansion driver and a cultural ambassador. He was so transcendent that in 1990, the Associated Press named him Male Athlete of the Decade.
His peak with the Kings came in 1993.
Yes. He led the Kings to their first Stanley Cup Finals appearance, thanks in part to a truly heroic performance, scoring a Game 7 hat-trick against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Campbell Conference Finals. Unfortunately, they lost the finals to Montreal.
That year, however, also saw the end of one of his most impressive statistical streaks.
It did. A back injury sidelined him for much of the 1992-93 regular season. His 65-point output ended his career-defining 13-year streak of recording at least 100 points each season. After that finals loss, the team began to falter.
And the financial instability in the Kings organization eventually necessitated another trade request.
Yeah, Bruce McNill was eventually forced to sell the team due to major financial troubles, and the new ownership struggled badly. There were reports that player paychecks were bouncing, creating immense internal friction and instability. Gretzky, disillusioned with the direction of the organization, requested a trade in early 1996, concluding his 8 seasons in LA.
That sets us up for Part 5. Final career moves and post-retirement roles. He moved to St. Louis first, looking for one last Cup contender.
On February 27, 1996, he was traded to the St. Louis Blues for 4 players and 2 draft picks. He was briefly named captain, and the Blues, reinforced by his presence, came within 1 game of the conference finals that spring. The city was briefly electric with hockey fever.
The expectation was that he would find fantastic chemistry with star Brett Hull, but that pairing never truly developed.
The expected offensive chemistry never materialized, and crucially, for the first time in his professional career, he had to endure public criticism from his head coach, Mike Keenan,
who was notoriously tough.
Keenan was known for his demanding and abrasive style, and his public rebukes of Gretzky were unprecedented. Gretzky's professional relationship with Keenan quickly became untenable, effectively ending any realistic chance of him remaining in St. Louis once he became a free agent that summer.
So the road led to Broadway and a reunion with his former Oilers running mate, Mark Messier.
After turning down an offer from the Blues, and after a verbal agreement with the Vancouver Canucks fell through because the organization became too demanding of him too quickly, Gretzky signed with the New York Rangers as a free agent on July 21, 1996. It was a 2-year, $8 million deal, and the goal was clear. Get one more cup with Messier.
That reunion brought one final, glorious, deep playoff run in 1997.
They did reach the Eastern Conference Finals, where Gretzky proved he still had the genius, leading the team in scoring with 10 goals and 10 assists. That would be his last great burst of playoff performance, as the Rangers did not return to the postseason until 2006.
What were the major milestones he reached during his final years in New York?
He hit one major milestone that speaks volumes about his longevity. He broke Gordie Howe's professional total goal-scoring record of 1,071, combining NHL and WHA regular season and playoff goals, finishing his career with 1,072 total goals.
But the body was breaking down.
The physical toll was showing in his final season, 1998-99. He only managed 9 goals, making it the only season in his professional career where he failed to average at least a point per game.
That brings us to the final moments of his playing career. The retirement game was a spectacle worthy of his status.
His final NHL game was on April 18, 1999, at Madison Square Garden. And the spectacle that day was just overwhelming. Even though it was the Rangers versus the Pittsburgh Penguins, both national anthems were specially altered to honor him. Bryan Adams sang, "We're gonna miss you, Wayne Gretzky," in O Canada, and the Star-Spangled Banner was altered to include the words, "In the land of Wayne Gretzky."
And he went out with one final fitting point, confirming his legacy as the ultimate playmaker.
He did. He assisted on the Rangers' only goal, scored by Brian Leetch. He was the second to last WHA player still active in professional hockey, retiring at 38 years old. Mark Messier, who was in attendance, was the last WHA veteran to hang up the skates.
Before discussing his transition to coaching and management, we need to touch briefly on his international highlights, which included some of the highest peaks of his career, but also one of the most lingering controversies, the 1998 Olympics.
His international career started early. He earned bronze at the 1978 World Junior Championships, where he was the youngest player at 16, but led the tournament in scoring with 17 points, a record for a 16-year-old that stood for decades. His personal peak, though, was arguably the 1987 Canada Cup.
He called the 1987 Canada Cup the best hockey he ever played.
That's because the stakes and the quality of play were so high against that dominant Soviet Union team. Playing on a line with Mario Lemieux, he set a tournament record with 21 points. In the decisive Game 3 against the Soviets, with the score tied 5-5 late in the third period, Gretzky executed this phenomenal, almost impossible 3-on-1 pass to Lemieux, who scored the game winner. That play is universally regarded as one of the most clutch and memorable in Canadian international competition history.
Then came the 1998 Winter Olympics in Nagano, the first with NHL participation where the stakes were highest, and the result was disappointment coupled with immense controversy.
The team was stacked, but there was immediate tension. Gretzky was controversially passed over for the captaincy in favor of the younger Eric Lindros. Canada was expected to win gold, but lost the semifinal to the Czech Republic, forcing a shootout.
And the lingering controversy is centered entirely around the coaching decision during that decisive shootout.
Yes. Coach Mark Crawford made the shocking decision not to select Gretzky as one of the 5 shooters in the decisive shootout, opting for 5 other players, all of whom failed to score against Dominik Hasek. The entire nation was left asking why the greatest scorer in history was sitting on the bench during the most critical moment.
That decision must have placed immense immediate pressure on Crawford. Was there any public statement or media reaction immediately following that loss?
The media reaction was swift, intense, and largely unforgiving of Crawford. The decision was viewed as baffling and deeply disrespectful to Gretzky's legacy and skill. Crawford defended the decision by citing the team's analysis that younger, faster players had better shootout records, but that explanation did little to quell the outrage.
How did Gretzky handle it?
The sources indicate that Gretzky himself was deeply disappointed, though he handled the situation with characteristic public grace. Canada went on to lose the bronze medal game to Finland. Despite that controversial exit, Gretzky retired from international play, holding the records for most goals, assists, and overall points in best-on-best hockey.
After hanging up the skates, he immediately transitioned into management and coaching, especially with the Phoenix Coyotes.
Almost immediately. In May 2000, he purchased a 10% stake in the Phoenix Coyotes, becoming alternate governor and head of hockey operations. His star power was instrumental in stabilizing the franchise, helping avert a potential relocation of the team to Portland, Oregon.
And his eventual move behind the bench in 2005.
He became head coach following the NHL lockout. and the team showed immediate, quantifiable improvement in his first season, increasing their win total by 16 games and showing a better overall competitive spirit.
But they never made the playoffs.
Despite that promising start and his immense knowledge of the game, the Coyotes never reached the postseason during his 4-year tenure as coach.
His exit from Phoenix was complicated by financial and ownership issues, mirroring some of the instability he saw in L.A. years earlier.
Very complicated. In 2009, the Coyotes holding company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy amidst an ownership dispute involving Jim Balsillie and the NHL. The entire situation was financially toxic and unstable. Gretzky stepped down in September 2009, citing the uncertainty, leaving a final coaching record of 143 wins, 161 losses, and 24 overtime losses. It really proved that genius as a player does not automatically translate to success behind the bench.
We should also remember his brief but high-profile return to the Oilers organization later in his career.
He returned to Edmonton in October 2016 as a minority partner and vice chairman of the Oilers Entertainment Group. It was a ceremonial and advisory role, bringing him back into the Oilers fold. He stepped down from that role in 2021, citing the pandemic and other life changes preventing him from dedicating the necessary time. Since leaving, he has become a high-profile analyst for Turner Sports' NHL coverage on TNT and TBS.
Finally, we arrive at Part 6, Legacy, Honors, and Complex Cultural Positioning. Let's start with the accolades. They came immediately, without delay.
The league didn't waste any time. He was immediately inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1999, bypassing the customary 3-year waiting period, and he was the last player ever to receive this honor. The following year, the NHL made a truly unprecedented decision, inspired by Major League Baseball retiring Jackie Robinson's number 42.
The ultimate honor, the retirement of 99 league-wide.
Across the entire league, no NHL player will ever wear the number 99 again, a sign of reverence only a handful of athletes across history have ever received. In terms of professional assessment, the Hockey News named him the #1 greatest player in NHL history in 1997, and The Athletic concurred in 2023.
Let's just recap the sheer volume of silverware he accumulated.
It's staggering. We're talking 10 Art Ross trophies as the scoring leader, 9 Hart trophies as MVP, 5 Lester B. Pearson Awards as the most outstanding player as judged by his peers, 2 Conn Smythe trophies as playoff MVP, and 5 Lady Byng trophies for sportsmanship and performance. He led the league in assists 16 times in his 19 professional seasons.
His legacy isn't just on the ice. He was also an early sports entrepreneur and cultural investor.
He was highly active off the ice. Between 1985 and 1992, he owned the Hull Olympics and the QMJHL, and famously changed their colors to silver and black, predicting the color scheme the Kings would eventually adopt.
And the CFL ownership with John Candy is a great story.
It is. He was a minority owner of the Toronto Argonauts in the CFL, alongside Bruce McNall and the late John Candy. They won the Grey Cup in their first year of ownership, 1991, and Gretzky's and Candy's names were later added to the cup.
He was a massive commercial success, rivaling other North American sports stars in marketability.
By the mid-90s, he was an endorsement titan, among the 5 highest-paid athlete endorsers in North America, with major deals including Coca-Cola, Domino's, and Sharp. Forbes estimated he made almost US $94 million from endorsements just between 1990 and 1998. Today, he's still leveraging that Nondom 99 trademark as part owner of the Wayne Gretzky Estate's winery and distillery in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
And he's highly involved in philanthropy, balancing the commercial success with community giving.
Yes, in 2002, he co-founded the Wayne Gretzky Foundation, which focuses on helping underprivileged youth participate in hockey by providing equipment and ice time. He is also involved with major charitable organizations like the CNIB, Make-A-Wish, and the ALS Superfund.
Now we must transition to one of the more peculiar and ongoing controversies surrounding his public status as a Canadian icon, his connection to the Order of Canada. For those unfamiliar with the Canadian honor system, what is the context here?
The Order of Canada is the country's highest civilian honor. Gretzky was first appointed an officer of the Order of Canada, the mid-level grade, in 1984, recognizing his athletic achievements, gentlemanly conduct, and philanthropy. Then, in 2009, he was promoted to Companion, which is the highest rank.
Reserved for the best of the best.
It's reserved for those who have demonstrated the highest degree of merit to Canada and humanity.
But there's a persistent and awkward problem with the investiture ceremony that has now spanned over 15 years.
There is. To formally become a Companion, you must attend an official investiture ceremony in Ottawa, presided over by the Governor General. As of 2025, Gretzky has still not attended. His agent has consistently cited scheduling conflicts, noting that investitures are held only 4 times a year.
But that excuse has drawn significant and public criticism, right?
It has. Christopher McCreery, a respected expert on Canada's honor system, publicly criticized Gretzky for the no-show, calling it insulting to the others who get them because it devalues the seriousness of the honor. The Governor General's office confirmed in 2015 that out of 467 individuals appointed as companions since 1967, only 5, including Gretzky, had not been invested. This non-attendance remains a strange cultural footnote, suggesting a degree of disengagement from Canada's highest official recognition.
And this complicated cultural positioning has only intensified recently due to his political activities, which cross the Canada-U.S. border and clash with some segments of Canadian public sentiment.
This is a complex area we must present impartially. Gretzky is a dual citizen of Canada and the United States, though he is sometimes denied having U.S. citizenship as recently as 2025. He has long aligned himself with the Conservative Party in Canada, notably endorsing Stephen Harper, whom he publicly called one of the greatest prime ministers ever. He also aligned with Republican politicians in the U.S., praising President George W. Bush in 2003 as a great leader.
Which brings us to the recent public backlash surrounding his visibility around the 2024 U.S. election and the 2025 international hockey event.
Following the 2024 U.S. election, Gretzky attended Donald Trump's victory party, a highly visible political alignment. Subsequently, Trump publicly suggested Gretzky should be Prime Minister or Governor of Canada, amplifying Gretzky's political visibility. This culminated in adverse reactions from some Canadian fans at the Four Nations Face-Off Finals in February 2025.
Adverse reactions meaning active displays of dissent.
Yes. When he was awarded the honorary team captain for Canada at the finals, he received audible boos from sections of the crowd. And the perception of betrayal was further fueled by specific visual details at that event.
What were those details?
Unlike the American honorary captain, Gretzky did not wear a Team Canada jersey. Furthermore, he was seen giving a clear thumbs-up gesture to the American team, but not offering a similar gesture to the Canadian team.
And why did the lack of a Team Canada jersey in 2025 resonate so strongly with that betrayal narrative?
It was seen by critics as a visual confirmation of his long-standing absence and his increasing alignment with U.S. interests, particularly following his endorsement activities. This fueled intense fan reaction online, notably a Reddit petition that circulated, calling for the renaming of Wayne Gretzky Drive in Edmonton, citing fan feelings of cultural and patriotic betrayal.
So his career legacy, while absolutely untouchable on the ice and revered globally, is clearly facing a nuanced public scrutiny in Canada. It's related to his long-standing absence, his perceived disinterest in high national honors, and his recent political alignment.
It shows the complex position of a transnational icon. For decades, he was Canada's undisputed golden boy. Now, his complex identity as an American resident and his political preferences are being weighed against his historical status by certain segments of the Canadian public. It's a dynamic, ongoing cultural shift in how he is perceived at home.
That is a fascinating and crucial piece of context for the end of his career. Let's wrap up our deep dive with a final summation of his statistical and strategic impact.
The conclusion is simply undeniable. Wayne Gretzky redefined hockey by prioritizing intellect, anticipation, and strategy over size or brute force. He used pattern recognition and anticipation, a skill he diligently developed through relentless, almost medical-level study, to effectively slow down time on the ice. He dominated both the struggling WHA and the physical NHL, forcing the entire sport globally to shift toward a faster, more precise, and more team-centric five-man unit approach.
His career totals stand as impenetrable monuments in sports history, statistics that may never ever be approached again.
Absolutely. We look at the overwhelming numbers one last time to truly grasp the scale. 894 career goals, 1,963 career assists, for a total of 2,857 career points. A legend whose assists alone outscore nearly every other player's career total offensive production.
And that strategic approach, that insistence that genius is simply preparation meeting opportunity, is the key takeaway we wanted to leave you with today. He claimed that what looked like pure instinct was just diligent preparation, recognizing those stored patterns instantly.
So we leave you with this provocative thought, something to mull over from this deep dive. If the pinnacle of sports genius is simply preparation meeting opportunity, demonstrated by Gretzky's obsessive study of patterns, what area of your own life, whether professional, creative, or personal, could benefit from applying that same level of dedicated, pattern-recognizing study?
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the great one. We'll see you next time.